Hey, Hunks Adventure here. Now, I probably mentioned either the imposter syndrome video or the autism video, possibly both, that I had documented my life for the most part in the year of 2024 using the Notes app on my phone. It was a year full of hardships, rewards, and just overall a roller coaster for my mental health. But I have taken the notes and put them on my laptop. So in this video, I plan on kind of reading those as well as filling in with some more context or details on certain things. So if you're interested in hearing about my life from last year, please stick around for this video. So with that said, let's get into it. I'm going to be reading these notes looking this way at my laptop, but then switching over as I have some context for certain things. So 2024 started with lots of self-worth and wanting to build my dull skill set. I had watched The Longest View, which led me to a great nostalgia for malls. So if you're not familiar with The Greatest View, it is a video that Kane Pixels had produced. Now, it looked very real. Actually, I've seen some reels of it where people did think that it was a real video, but it was all made with CGI and just computers and things like that. So it's really impressive, but it kind of takes the story of a person who goes out in the middle of nowhere, finds a hole in the ground, and it's a stairway that goes all the way down into basically an underground mall where a rolling giant entity chases them. And I won't go into much more on that, but it's just really cool. It was a liminal space, and it involved being in this mall where everything seemed fine, but of course there were no people or anything like that. It was just kind of abandoned in that sense, but still alive very much with the music. But yeah, with that, that led me down a path of, I'm interested in this kind of content. I like seeing dying malls, or malls just kind of how they had been in the past versus now, especially with a lot of online shopping and just seeing malls slowly die out in terms of that. Now, personally, can't say that I see that where I live, because our malls are very much thriving, but I do know of at least one area, further away where stuff is closing, so I guess I kind of see that there. But really got into that. I mentioned, malls with maybe 1 to 2 shops or an anchor store left, a handful of mall walkers at best at any given time. Something about malls and how I've always taken them for granted. I never thought such big structures of business would slowly die or, kind of be removed. More pieces of my childhood slowly departing, in a sense, with everything moving to the digital age. I looked in the Mill Creek Mall, which is a place that I had gone to as a kid and even worked at for a little bit while I was going to tech school. Was relieved to see it thriving and doing well for the most part. Also learned that it's one of the biggest malls in America, and while watching videos on dying malls, that led me to dead malls, ones that were essentially shut down to the public and falling apart or waiting to be torn down. That led me to discovering the proper people and eventually coming across myhouse.wad, which is a Doom mod with all sorts of feelings that hit. Maybe it's due to the fascination of how one person was able to change a game that had been around for decades so much, and while even new and veteran players, subtle changes and just liminal spaces in the game paired with brilliant music allowed me to reevaluate life and my own feelings of being in a liminal space. And yeah, that game, I don't know why or how I came across it, but that mod really hit me at that point in life. There's a lot of things based off of the book The House of Leaves, and yeah, just the subtle changes, the eerie music where a song would be normal, and then 10 minutes in, all of a sudden there's just a slight deviation before it kind of changes completely. Just the areas where you feel like you had been there, and then you would go through a door and you'd come back and things would be different. The way they had made the map, where in Doom you didn't really have two-story areas in a sense. If you did, it was like a ramp going up, but a thing that was kind of considered to be in this case, an upstairs and a basement of a house. And the way they kind of did that was with teleportation and just making it seem like you're actually going down and stuff like that. So very interesting how they were able to pull that off in that game. I was between being in management but longing for automation, something I'd wanted to do and get back into trying since 2016. I worked hard and was able to move into automation in April. So yeah, it's been a year now for me with getting into automation. And leading up to this, I came across other things like a channel called Flavor Trip. They are an amazing DJ couple, just filled to the brim with positive vibes and great music. And that really helped me stay positive throughout a lot of those days, especially, you know, just with things going on in life. And like I said, it was a roller coaster and it was feeling like it was heading towards a decline. So it was nice having some positivity there, especially in the form of music and just seeing them, you know, just living life, being happy, cooking food, putting out good music, dancing, just, you know, all the good vibes, honestly. And let's see what else we got. School. So my oldest was finally of age and we were looking to get him into preschool, and we got him registered and had to wait a good chunk of the year to find out if he'd be accepted or not. And this was paired with also getting him, you know, tested for the ADHD and autism, as family members, you know, kind of mentioned that, and, you know, as pediatrician, both felt that it might help us explain some of the behaviors that he had. And we tried the occupational therapy for a bit, needed something else. He was officially diagnosed with autism in April and recommended for the ABA therapy, which they were wanting to do for 20 hours a week. And then this was a drop-off type of therapy, but something hard for me to do when, you know, being in the office 2 days a week and living over an hour from the office as well. So the same thing proved to be a challenge for when school would start as well. So I was trying to be proactive with this, and yeah, you know, for months I was stressing out over this. A lot of scenarios constantly running through my head with no strong plan. Somewhere in the middle of all of this, I really got into 90s jungle, D&B, ambient, jazz type music. I think it hit some sort of heartstrings or nostalgia and just overall slower times as a kid, you know, playing video games and stuff like that. Also, I do apologize, you know, I do feel like the notes are very kind of scattered in a sense, right? Like I'm talking about one thing, jumping to the next. I'm just reading what I had jotted down in terms of that. So a lot of it was during the nighttime where I was getting ready for bed, and I was just like, you know what, this is something I just want to mention. That's kind of how some of these notes are written in a sense. So, but next we have, you know, so these were some of the scenarios that were running through my head. Do I move up to Idaho to have a network of family support? Because currently where we live, we don't have any support, honestly. It's just, you know, my immediate family that we have here, no parents or, you know, in-laws or anything like that. Yeah, you know, do we move to Idaho where we have that family support, a school that my in-laws, you know, work at, can help my son as well. But then that means driving 4 to 6 hours round trip, 2 days a week, just to keep my job and be in office, essentially. And I say 4 to 6 hours because it's like about a 2-hour drive one way. You know, we're talking like no traffic, like or if there is traffic, but it's like smooth and constant. Otherwise, you know, it could be 3 to 4 hours, or, you know, like one accident could shut the freeway down for a bit, so it could be even longer. And that's just, you know, a lot of times where, you know, I have a chance of just like missing and not seeing my family a lot, especially if, you know, it's 2 days a week. And, you know, that eats into time where I might be spending time with my family. I could be helping my son with things, or just, you know, playing with them, cooking and eating dinner, getting ready for bed and things like that. It eats into that. And on top of that, then getting ready for the day and leaving to, you know, make that massive drive in is also eating away at my sleep. So, you know, there are things with that, and then it's like, okay, well, if I do move to Idaho, do I find a new job? Either something remote or something local to get by, you know, financially. You know, while Oliver would have an easier time with schooling, he wouldn't get the ABA therapy to help him later in life, so there are things like that. that I was kind of keeping in mind. And even looking around the city of Miami live in is very tiny. There's really nothing there unless you're gonna work at a gas station. Their school was getting a new IT person, and I had reached out, but never heard back on any of that. And I was even to the point of like, okay, well, maybe I'll find a job at like a gas station that pay like decent enough, just to maybe have a less stressful job or things to worry about, just being able to enjoy life more, but still being able to provide for the family. They also have like a pumice mine, but a lot of people are like, oh yeah, you probably shouldn't do that, it's hard work and things like that. So there was the stress of that, but I did reach out to a recruiter and kind of talk to them, and they mentioned they didn't really have any openings or nothing, I guess, within the IT field, which was fine for me. I was just trying to find something. That's how desperate things had become. And, I had applied at tons and tons of places, but yeah, with a lot of people in tech being laid off, it was really hard just trying to get in anywhere. We're talking thousands of applications within minutes for pretty much every job posting that you would see on LinkedIn. Do I stay where I'm at, but find a new job that is remote and understands my family's situation and appreciates and accommodates me while allowing me to ensure that I'll get the job done? Do I stay where I'm at and figure out a way to keep my job of 10 plus years? Do I get a second vehicle, insure it, register it, and spend $300 to $600 a month just to have this other vehicle? Going that route meant that my wife would have to get our son to school those 2 days a week that I couldn't be able to do that. We also had a 1-year-old baby who's on a different sleep schedule and likes to be up all night, and this proved to be challenging. Not only that, but my wife deals with vertigo most of the time with that, and driving just wouldn't really be ideal for her, and she can't take medicine due to it for currently breastfeeding. Another option we had was hiring a nanny just for carpooling, essentially, but we didn't really trust a stranger just to drop off and pick up our son from school. What if there's an incident at the school and things like that, and just being away. Lots of questions and scenarios were just constantly flooding my mind, which did not help my mental health at all, especially a lot of what ifs and not even knowing the route I was going to go, but just trying to really plan for it, right? Like that's something we always want to do. We want to be prepared for certain things. That's really tough when everything is up in flux in terms of that, and just really not knowing what is going to happen. And yeah, a friend of mine recommended the Bluey episode called The Sign. And I was always talked about this with my family and friends, how I can always get another job, but I can't get another family. And that episode sort of brought that together as well. We weren't moving, and if my job was no longer a good fit, then it was time to find a new one. And I always knew early on last year that it was going to be one of the hardest years for my life, professionally, personally, and just overall for my growing family. And one thing I knew too was that once it was over, it'd be over, or at least hopefully, and I'd be able to write out the outcome, whatever it may be, this year. And lastly, I say, no matter what life throws at you, you'll figure something out, or just wait and see. Just because something bad happens doesn't mean it wasn't to set you up for something good in the future. So if you're going through a rough patch, just know that once you're past it and doing better, look back and reflect upon the situation. Sometimes it's easier once we have all the pieces. Use that knowledge going forward to not stress it out too much. You got this. And then I have that dated at April 22nd, 2024. I mentioned I look forward to using most, if not all, of this come 2025, buddy. And that's where it ends. So as you can see, I never did continue adding to the diary, and that's a shame. Now, of course, things didn't get better right after that. As I mentioned in the imposter syndrome video, at the start of April 2024, I moved into my engineering role. Still getting my feet wet with learning and writing code. And as I mentioned in the imposter syndrome video, I didn't really have any sort of onboarding process. It was kind of me just being thrown in, trying to learn this thing, and I did have friends in the department and in development that were able to kind of help me there, but I often felt like an imposter. and I would spend nights watching videos, trying to learn more about code, as well as listening to like coding podcasts and people, on their journeys and stuff like that as I was driving those long distances into work. And even with that, speaking of those drives, I would often think, is it worth it? In terms of, just being stuck in this traffic for so long. And it's just that really ate away at me too. Or it's just like, I could be, doing these other things. I could be spending time with my family. Is it worth it? Like, am I actually learning this code? And just, those long drives didn't really help me in terms of that. And just, thinking about if it would be worth it, even with the move, it's like you take that long drive and you're amplifying it now to even a longer drive. But one thing they did do was help me stay busy in terms of, taking my mind off things. Now I mentioned, they ate away at me mentally, but I did find some good podcasts. I really like Good Mythical Morning and Red and Link, so I started listening to their Ear Biscuits podcast, because that's not something I watch or really have time to listen to, but having that really helped, kind of allow my mind to escape for a bit. And things felt like they were starting to get better in May. I was learning a bit more and slowly getting a bit more confident, and then it all changed again. We had another department that was migrating to a new service, and they needed help. I had previous leadership experience. They didn't really have someone that was going to be able to help drive that project and ensure it was staying on track and needs were going to be met. But the issue was, I wrote in Java, and their department was trying to do automated code using C#, which I had zero knowledge of. And I also wasn't familiar with their product as a whole, because it didn't really use a user interface. It was all kind of like back-end code and database, which proved to be challenging as well. So having a sense of familiarity and slowly grasping and learning in my new role, all of that pretty much went out the window as I was being moved over to try and help another department. Now, of course, I knew some of the people there, and some of them I didn't, but it was very stressful and caused me to almost have a downward spiral in terms of, already dealing with imposter syndrome, and now on top of this, I've got an even deeper imposter syndrome where people feel that I am confident enough and able to help out in the scenario and just jump in, when really I'm not familiar with anything and am expected to just figure it out or help out. And we would spend weeks just not really getting anywhere. We had spent weeks trying to get me set up to be able to help code some of the things for them, despite not knowing any of it. But things worked out. We never did get the code set up. We ran into issue after issue, and some people get further than others with setup, and then things would get blocked because of hardware issues on machines and things like that. And then there's a deadline, which proved to help actually drive some of the things. So one of my suggestions was we had this other company that we're migrating with. They wrote their own tests to kind of help ensure that the integrated process was working. And one of my things was we could watch them run their test. Like, we're just validating that the stuff works. So if they've already written it, we can just ensure that it works by watching it run, and they've already done that for us. We don't need to add more. So that was one helpful thing, because we were like, we can see that it's working. I'm fine passing this off and saying that it's good. Now, of course, there are other things that we did check manually. It was just a matter of pulling teeth and essentially getting people to give us the information we needed, and I was able to help drive that and push that. So I was very happy that I was able to find some kind of compromise or way that I was able to help out with what I knew, as well as ensuring that we were getting enough coverage to make a decision that we had met the needs. And so as that piece was coming to an end, I thought I was gonna switch back to my department that I had been at for 8 or so years in terms of that specific department. And something came up. One of the other engineers that was helping on the project I was on was going on parental leave very soon. So there were talks of, hey, you could stay in this department and help out in terms of that. And that really shook me, because I had zero interest in going there, because I was stressing out about it. I still didn't really know a lot of the stuff, and it just made it tough. The department really lacks in communication, so I suppose there would have been some things that I could have brought strength-wise to try and make it a better department, but dealing with the imposter syndrome and knowing that I would be doing the automation for them and not necessarily just manual testing It just made it tough for me, but luckily my boss, reached out, we talked about it, and I mentioned my mental health and that it wouldn't be good for me, and I needed to get back over to the department and product that I was familiar with for so many years, because I still need to prove to myself that I can write code for it and become a more useful member of the team and become knowledgeable in that. And of course, after years or a couple years, if I feel sufficient enough, then I can start branching off and learning other code and other products and things like that. But being new to that role after only a month essentially, and then being asked to help out on something completely different, and it just really wasn't just good for me to try and deal with at that point. And then June rolls around, and I just remember thinking to myself, am I ever going to feel sufficient enough that I'm able to do trainings and really help others that were doing manual testing transition and move into an automation role like me? And I just remember not wanting them to feel stuck or helpless, kind of like I did for a bit, and creating onboarding documentation or just have test examples and things like that. But I just remember always wondering if I was going to get over that much of the imposter syndrome so that I could help others not run into having that much of an imposter syndrome. So in June though, I had packed up about 90% of my house. I had gotten a good amount of things that we didn't need to throw away. I was getting in touch with a realtor who was able to help us with selling our house in our current state, as well as look at homes up in Idaho. We also had set up with a broker and things like that. We're getting the loan and all the paperwork and things like that. So we started looking at houses up in Idaho, and overall just wasn't exactly impressed. Now, of course, my wife already knew this, being her hometown, just knowing that all the houses were going to be older. They all have propane tanks for heating and things like that. The layouts are kind of odd. And one of the things for me was just I wanted a house that had at least 3 bedrooms on the same floor. Because a lot of them would have like one room up like in the attic, and then 1 or 2 in the main, and then some in the basement and things like that. And I really wanted 3 kind of together, so that way my family could all be on the same floor and my kids could feel safe. And on top of that, with the market and the houses were incredibly small. Town is super tiny as well. They don't even have a stoplight or anything like that. There's not a lot of options in terms of jobs, but surprisingly there were a lot of houses that just kept going up. We headed back to Utah after a trip up there looking at houses, and I was packing a bit more, had a call with my realtor. We were going to have them come down, take some photos, but then that Bluey episode kind of rushed through my head one night. I was out throwing out more stuff that I was getting rid of, and it was kind of starting to storm. I remember just taking some stuff out and just kind of looking up at the sky and just embracing the winds and the rain on my face, and just kind of thinking to myself, is this what I should be doing right now? Is this best for me? Is it best for my son, my family, even just my life in general? Is this what we should be doing? Just hoping to embrace all that and ultimately have some sort of answer, and just thinking back to that Bluey episode as well. And the next day I was back in the office, and I remember getting a phone call and going to my car, and it was the ABA therapy place. They had gotten back to us with my son being on the waiting list and said, hey, we can bring him in for an assessment and we can get you guys scheduled so that way we can start having him do the ABA therapy. And at that point, that was kind of like, okay, that's the call. This is my sign that I was hoping for. The move is now off the table. We're meant to stay here, and that's that. And I've of course explained more about the ABA therapy thing in the autism video, and how ultimately we didn't go through with that. So please do watch that video if that's something you're interested in. I can always link that, as well as the imposter syndrome if you want to know more about that. I can put those videos in the description or link them if YouTube allows me to do so. But yeah, between the stress of the daily routine that therapy would bring, not only for my schedule but also my son's, and thinking ahead in terms of that and our mental health, trying to fit that in, it felt like every positive had a negative to kind of go with it. But luckily I've got some good friends at work, and some with more say than others, or at least in terms of persuasion, despite my attempts of being proactive and mentioning these things and the stressors it was causing, and me trying to say, I don't mind being in office for these, but come fall, or when my son is starting the ABA therapy or going to school, like the burden it was the burden that it was going to bring to me, and just trying to be proactive with it, and just being told no, absolutely not, there's nothing we can do, can't make exceptions, anything like that. But then, yeah, as my mental health started deteriorating, I had a coworker who noticed, and he reached out, we talked about it, and he said he would talk to the same person I had talked to, and next thing I know, that higher up person reached out and like, oh yeah, we can absolutely make an accommodation, just get a doctor's note for that all. So that was great, but also, to me, a bit flip-floppy, gaslighty type thing, in terms of, me trying to be proactive and prevent all of this and keep my mental health and everything, sane, and being told no to, months later, the same person being like, oh, absolutely, we can do this. That didn't exactly sit right with me either, but we were able to get the doctor's note from the ABA therapy, and I was able to switch to a remote plan. So that was nice there, and that changed everything for me. That allowed me to accommodate for my son and his needs while still being able to do the great work that I do from home, especially because I'm not customer facing or anything like that. The people that I work with I've known for years. I have no problem having a camera on, talking with them, and ensuring that we're getting work done, and reaching out and communicating, things like that. Anything that you would do whether you're in office or not. That's not only helped with my mental health, but also just helped me clear, the thoughts that I had in my head, and now be able to focus on life as well as my work. And yeah, it was really just life-changing in terms of, that being able to be shifted with last year, and being able to ensure that I get my son to and from school, not worrying about being an hour away, with being in office, especially, if there was an incident, kind of like I talked about in another video, that scary drive of, even only being a couple of minutes away from the school, but getting a call to, rush over there, and just, every minute thinking about that and making sure my son was okay. I couldn't even imagine if I was an hour away, and just that whole time just eating away, like, I hope he's okay, I hope everything's all right, and not being able to do anything else about it besides just trying to get there, but the distance being a big problem. So in the end, things did work out for me, just like 2020 for me had hoped for exactly 1 year ago. And if you've watched this far, thank you for listening. And I hope no matter what you're going through, just know that things will get better. They just take time. Sometimes it's nice just being able to, kind of document things and look back on them. Of course, I haven't really done that this year in terms of taking notes, but I kind of feel like this channel is my way of doing that now. Instead of writing them in a notepad, I'm able to put my thoughts out there in the form of videos. But that's gonna do it for this video. So as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next video.